Hi, welcome to the Aftermath Tales. Ready for a new story? Very well, let's begin.
Hi, have you ever noticed how a single text message can change everything? My name is Kiara Wilson, 24, a senior associate at Blackwood & Myers in Chicago. The job title sounded impressive. It should have been for the 80-hour weeks I put in. But that day, none of that mattered. What mattered was the text message I received on my phone. Help me. One word. 5 letters. No space. No punctuation. It had been 3 months since my mother had texted me directly. My fingers hovered over the screen, my heart suddenly a jackhammer in my chest. Mom had taught me proper grammar before I could tie my shoes. This wasn't like her at all. I called Dad immediately, my hands trembling as Chicago's evening traffic roared outside my apartment window. When his face appeared on screen, something was off. His usually meticulous hair was sticking up in patches. The Windsor knot in his tie, the only kind he'd worn for 30 years at First National, was askew. "Kiara, what a surprise! Everything okay, sweetheart?" His voice was too bright, too forced. I had spent my entire career reading micro-expressions across boardroom tables. I knew when someone was hiding something. "Just checking on Mom," I said casually. "How is she today?" Dad's eyes darted to something off screen. "Oh, she's resting now. The new medication makes her drowsy." A whisper floated from somewhere behind him. A woman's voice, urgent but trying to stay quiet. "Not now." Jenny, Mom's so-called caretaker, Mom's supposed best friend from book club. The woman Dad called a blessing to the family at least 3 times every time we spoke. "I'd like to see her," I said, my voice hardening just enough to let Dad know this wasn't a request. "She's sleeping, Kiara. You know how important rest is with her condition." The progressive muscular disorder. The diagnosis that had come 6 months ago that sent me spiraling, that made me accept the promotion and transfer to Chicago because the money was better, because Mom would need specialized care as the disease progressed, because I could send more each month from 1,000 miles away. What I hadn't known then was that Mom could still move just fine. The diagnosis was early stage, years before she'd need the kind of intensive care Jenny was supposedly providing. "Wake her up," I said, my tone making it clear I wouldn't back down. "Or I'm getting on the next flight home." Something like panic flickered across Dad's face. He looked off screen again, a silent conversation happening without words. "Fine. Just give me a minute." The camera jostled as Dad moved through the house, my childhood home, toward Mom's bedroom. I caught glimpses of familiar wallpaper, family photos, the grandfather clock in the hallway that still chimed too loudly. When they finally reached Mom, my heart stopped. She was propped against pillows, eyes half-lidded. I could see the unmistakable discoloration on her left cheek, a bruise, and her lip, split slightly at the corner, dried and swollen from where no one bothered to clean it. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to smile, pretending I didn't notice. "Hi, baby," Mom whispered, her voice thin, nothing like the woman who used to sing in the kitchen while making Sunday pancakes. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice light, "you look tired. Are you getting enough rest?" "She fell," Dad interjected quickly, though I hadn't asked. "Tried to get up on her own this morning." Jenny moved into frame, her hand possessively on Mom's shoulder. "We've told Jasmine she needs to call for help, but she's still so independent." Something in Jenny's smile made my skin crawl. I had been sending $3,000 a month directly to Jenny, the professional nurse that Mom trusted, her supposed best friend from book club, to cover Mom's medical bills, supplements, and specialized care. Yet Mom looked worse than the last time I had seen her. Thinner, frailer, afraid. I ended the call after a few more minutes of forced pleasantries, making no mention of coming home. But as soon as the screen went dark, I was booking an emergency flight and requesting leave from work. Something was very wrong in my childhood home, and I intended to find out what. The emergency leave request was on my boss's desk within the hour. By morning, I was on a flight back to Pennsylvania. I didn't tell Dad or Jenny that I was coming home. Something about that video call felt wrong. The way Dad looked disheveled, the whisper in the background, Mom's bruised face that they claimed was from a fall. I prayed I was being paranoid, that my corporate mind was seeing conspiracies where there were none. But I had to know for sure. I needed to see what was really happening when they thought no one was watching. So I rented a car at the airport and parked 3 houses down, out of view from the living room windows. My heart pounded as I sat there for a moment, hoping desperately that I would walk in to find Mom being well cared for, that I would feel foolish for my suspicions. It was just past noon when I noticed that my dad's car is not there. I used my key to slip in through the side door, moving as quietly as possible. Please let me be wrong, I thought. Please let everything be normal. The smell hit me first. Not the familiar scent of Mom's lavender sachets or Dad's coffee. It was the acrid bite of neglect, unwashed bedding, stale air, medicinal. The house was quiet, except for the soft drone of a television coming from Mom's room. I moved silently down the hallway, training from years of entering meetings unnoticed serving me well. When I peeked around the doorframe, what I saw confirmed every terrible suspicion. Mom was alone, lying in a bed with visibly soiled sheets. Her hair, the thick chestnut waves she had always been so proud of, was matted against her scalp. Her water glass was empty, just out of reach. The TV was playing a show she had always hated. "Mom?" I whispered. Her eyes widened, fear giving way to recognition, then relief so profound it broke something inside me. "Kiara," she mouthed, tears immediately welling. "You came." I rushed to her, carefully helping her sit up, getting her water, trying not to show my horror at how light she felt, how her nightgown hung from her frame. "Where are they?" I asked, once she had taken small, careful sips. "Shopping," Mom whispered. "They go every Thursday. Jenny, she makes the list." I helped Mom clean up as best I could. A warm washcloth to her face, gentle wipes around her neck and arms. I couldn't change her clothes without them noticing, but I did what I could. The bruise on her cheek wasn't the only one. They were scattered across her arms, her shoulders, too perfectly shaped to be from falls. "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice breaking. Her eyes darted to the door, afraid. "I managed to grab my phone yesterday." It was on the nightstand. They use it to play music to relax me. The bitterness in her voice broke my heart. "I texted you. Jenny doesn't know I sent anything. She caught me with the phone afterward and slapped me hard, then she took it away." "But your condition, shouldn't you be able to move more than this? To at least get to the bathroom on your own?" The diagnosis had been early stage. Movement restriction shouldn't have been happening yet. Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Jenny, she keeps giving me pills. She says they're for my condition, but they make me so drowsy I can barely lift my head. Sometimes I pretend to take them, hide them under my tongue. That's how I manage to text you. But when she catches me..." Her voice trailed off, gaze dropping to the bruises on her arms. My chest ran cold. "She's drugging you? With what?" "I don't know. They look like my regular medication, but they're different. When I asked, Jenny said the doctor changed the prescription. But I haven't seen Dr. Reynolds in months. Every time I'm supposed to have an appointment, Jenny says I'm too weak, that she'll take notes for me." The realization hit me like a physical blow. Jenny wasn't just neglecting Mom. She had been actively keeping her sedated, isolated, convinced she was more disabled than she actually was. A sudden memory surfaced, the camera. The small security camera I had bought when I moved to Chicago, intending to set it up in my apartment but never got around to it. I had brought it home during my last visit, then forgotten it in the rush to return. "Mom, I'm going to look for something. I'll be right back." I slipped into my old bedroom, untouched since high school, except for the thin layer of dust coating everything. The camera should have been in my closet, top shelf, where I had stashed it in its box. But when I opened the closet, I froze. The shelf had been rearranged. Someone had been in here. Heart racing, I pushed aside old yearbooks and found a stack of documents that definitely weren't mine. Bank statements, property deeds, what looked like a will. With shaking hands, I spread them on my childhood desk. The house, Mom owned it outright. I had never known. Dad had always talked like it was his, like the mortgage was his burden alone. Then a bank statement for an account I had never seen before. Mom's name only. Regular deposits dating back years. A balance that made me gasp. $142,768.09. Attached to it was a small notebook. Mom's handwriting on the cover. When I opened it, my breath caught in my throat. inside the front cover in Mom's precise penmanship for my daughter Kiara. With all my love, Mom, she had been saving this, all of this, for me, since her diagnosis, maybe even before. The most recent transactions in the statement made my chest run cold. Online transfer to account number 4872, $15,000, April 2nd. Online transfer to account number 4872, $20,000, April 17th. Online transfer to account number 4872, $25,000, May 1st. Online transfers. Dad probably knew my mom's online banking username and password. Increasing amounts, accelerating pace. They were draining her, stealing what she had meant for me. Beneath the statements, I found a dusty photo frame turned face down. When I flipped it over, my stomach dropped. Dad and Jenny, arms around each other on some beach I didn't recognize. The timestamp in the corner, 3 years ago, long before Mom's diagnosis, before Jenny had become our savior, before Dad started calling her a blessing to the family. My hand flew to my mouth to stifle a scream of rage. 3 years. They had been having an affair for 3 years, and now they were systematically stealing Mom's money, her inheritance, the nest egg she had never told me about. While I had been killing myself in Chicago, sending what I thought was desperately needed money. The camera. I needed to find the camera. It was wedged behind my old soccer trophies, still in its box. I set it up quickly, syncing it to my phone. The tiny lens was barely noticeable, disguised as part of a small decorative clock I placed on Mom's dresser. I have to go for a little while, I told Mom, hating myself for the fear that immediately clouded her eyes. Just a few hours. I need to get some evidence. I promise I'll be back. I kissed her forehead, tucked the blankets around her. Don't tell them I was here. Don't tell them about the camera. Can you do that for me, please, Mom? She nodded slightly. Hurry, she whispered. On my way out, I dialed 911, reporting suspected abuse and theft. I requested police assistance, but asked them to wait until I called back. I needed evidence first. The dispatcher seemed reluctant, but I explained that I was an attorney and knew what I was doing. They finally agreed to have officers on standby. The motel was 6 miles away, was dingy but had reliable Wi-Fi. I sat cross-legged on the scratchy bedspread, eyes fixed on my phone screen, watching Mom's empty room. Waiting, I heard them before I saw them. The front door slammed, bags rustled. Jasmine, Jenny's voice called out, falsely cheerful. We're back. Did you miss us? Jenny appeared in frame first, dropping a pharmacy bag on the dresser without glancing at Mom. Dad followed, hovering in the doorway like he couldn't bear to fully enter the room. Chicken soup for dinner, Jenny announced, though her tone suggested she was discussing garbage. Your favorite. Mom said nothing, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Did you hear me? Jenny's voice sharpened. She moved to the bed, blocking my view of Mom. I said we're having your favorite. Not hungry. Mom's voice was barely audible. What happened next sent me lurching for my car keys. Jenny's hand whipped through the air, the crack of skin on skin unmistakable. We spend all day shopping for you, cooking for you, cleaning up after you, and you can't even say thank you? Jenny hissed. Mom whimpered. Dad stepped forward, not to intervene, but to close the bedroom door, to hide what was happening from non-existent witnesses. The ungrateful bitch tried to use her phone, Jenny said, pacing now. I caught her yesterday reaching for it on the nightstand. Dad paled. Did she call anyone? Text anyone? I don't think so. I got to her in time, Jenny said with sickening pride. Don't worry, I made sure she understood her mistake. The bruise on Mom's cheek, the split lip, my vision blurred with fury. What if Kiara suspects something? Dad sounded nervous. Jenny laughed, a sound like breaking glass. That corporate drone? She believed everything we told her. Besides, she's too busy with her fancy job to care, as long as the money keeps coming. She moved to Dad then, wrapping her arms around his waist, pressing herself against him right there in front of Mom. Speaking of money, she purred, how soon can we move the next chunk? Dad glanced nervously at Mom. We should wait. Kiara's calls surprised me. If she decides to check in more often. We're running out of time, Larry. Jenny's voice hardened. The tests last week weren't good. We need to secure everything before she gets too bad, before we have to put her somewhere. Mom made a small, devastated sound. Don't look at me like that, Jasmine, Jenny snapped, breaking away from Dad to lean over the bed. You think your precious daughter would take care of you? She couldn't wait to leave. We're the ones changing your disgusting diapers, not her. I had seen enough. I saved the recording, sent copies to my email, my cloud storage, and my best friend with instructions to keep it safe. Then I drove, hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel, back to the house that had never been Dad's to begin with. They froze when I walked through the front door without knocking. Dad and Jenny were at the kitchen table, heads bent over paperwork that they scrambled to hide as I entered. "Kay, Kiara?" Dad stuttered. "We weren't expecting." Clearly, I cut him off, ice in my veins. Jenny recovered first, her smile stretching across her face like plastic wrap. "What a wonderful surprise. We were just talking about calling you. Your mother had such a good day yesterday." "Oh, really?" "Because she texted me help me and has a bruise on her face." The smile vanished. Jenny's eyes darted Dad's, silent communication passing being co-conspirators. "Now, Kiara," Dad began, using his banker voice, "your mother's condition causes her to bruise easily, and sometimes she gets confused. Can you please stop lying?" My voice was deadly quiet. "I saw the bank statements, Dad. I saw the transfers. I saw the picture of you two from 3 years ago." The color drained from Dad's face. Jenny's expression hardened into something ugly and familiar. "You don't understand," Dad tried again. "I understand perfectly. You and your bitch have been stealing Mom's money, the inheritance, the money she was saving for me, while I've been sending thousands every month to this fraud nurse who's been abusing my mother." The slap echoed through the kitchen like a gunshot. My palms stung, but the shock on Jenny's face was worth it. "That's for my mother," I said. Jenny's shock transformed into rage. "You little bitch!" She lunged at me, fingers curved like claws. I sidestepped her attack, sending her stumbling backward. She crashed into the counter, then spun around, eyes wild. "How about you see this?" I pulled out my phone and pressed play. Jenny's voice filled the kitchen, cold, cruel, unmistakable as she hit Mom and discussed stealing her money. Dad's eyes widened in horror. You recorded us?" "I've already sent copies to my lawyer and the police are on their way." Jenny made a desperate lunge for my phone. We struggled briefly, but I grabbed her hair and used her momentum to slam her face first into the refrigerator door. There was a sickening thud as her face connected with the metal. "That one, too, is for my mother!" I screamed. Jenny crumpled to the floor, completely dazed from the impact. Her nose was clearly broken, already swelling badly, and she seemed disoriented and dizzy from hitting her head so hard. She could barely focus her eyes. Dad rushed toward me, panic in his eyes. "Kiara, please, we can work this out. Family business should stay in the family." "You stopped being family the moment you let her hit Mom," I said coldly. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. When the operator answered, I spoke clearly. "I need an ambulance at 1437 Oakview Drive. My mother has been the victim of abuse and neglect. I also need the police. The abusers are trying to escape right now." Dad made a desperate lunge for the phone. "Hang up, Kiara. Don't do this." I sidestepped him easily. "The male subject is becoming aggressive," I told the operator. "Please hurry." Dad helped the barely conscious Jenny to her feet. She was swaying, still clutching her face, clearly struggling to stay upright. "Larry, we need to go," she mumbled through her swollen nose. They stumbled toward the door. I followed them outside, staying on the phone. I heard the car door slam, then Jenny's weak, frustrated cry, "The tires, they're flat." Dad looked around desperately. "We have to run," but Jenny could barely stand, let alone run. She was too dizzy and disoriented. They made it maybe 15 feet away from the front porch before Jenny collapsed onto the ground, Dad sitting beside her. I watched from the porch as the first police car came, blue lights flashing. An officer stepped out, taking in the scene, Dad sitting on the ground with his head in his hands, and Jenny slumped beside him, still dazed and holding her broken nose. "I'm Kiara Wilson," I said, stepping off the porch. "I called earlier. That's my father and his girlfriend. They've been abusing my mother and stealing from her. I have the evidence with me." The officer radioed for backup, then approached Dad and Jenny. Dad immediately raised his hands in surrender, while Jenny could barely lift her head, still disoriented from her injury. Within minutes, more police cars arrived, followed by an ambulance. I told them about my mom. The paramedics split up. Some headed inside to check on Mom, while others examined Jenny's injuries before the officers could arrest them both. I went back inside with one of the paramedics to show them to Mom's room. After they evaluated her condition and carefully moved her to a stretcher, the officers explained what would happen next. They had detained Dad and Jenny, who would be taken to the station for questioning. "We'll need to do a full evaluation," one of the paramedics explained kindly as we prepared to leave, "especially if there's been medication issues." I nodded, never letting go of Mom's hand. "I'm coming with her." The paramedic smiled. "Of course." As they loaded Mom into the ambulance, I watched the police cruiser with Dad and Jenny pull away. Mom followed my gaze. "It's really over?" she asked, her voice small but hopeful. I squeezed her hand gently. "Yes, they can't hurt you anymore? You're going to be okay?" For the first time in months, her eyes held something besides fear. She squeezed my hand back, she whispered, "Because you came home." 3 months later. The courtroom had fallen silent as Mom's wheelchair was positioned in front of the witness stand. Without the sleeping pills Jenny had forced on her, Mom had regained much of her strength. Her doctor, her real doctor, not the fictional appointments Jenny had claimed to attend, confirmed what I had suspected. Mom's condition had still been in very early stages. With proper care and physical therapy, she could walk short distances, feed herself, and manage most daily activities without assistance. The difference had been stark. When I found her 3 months earlier, she could barely lift her head. Now she sat tall, her gaze steady as she was sworn in. Judge Reynolds had leaned forward slightly. "Mrs. Wilson, are you comfortable to proceed?" "Yes, Your Honor," Mom said, her voice clear and strong. The prosecutor, Alexandra Smith, approached. "Mrs. Wilson, can you tell the court about your relationship with the defendant, Jennifer Howell?" Mom's eyes flickered briefly to Jenny, who sat rigid at the defense table, the jagged scar on her nose still livid against her pale skin. "Jenny was my friend," Mom began. "We met at book club 5 years ago. When I was diagnosed with myopathy last year, she told me she had nursing experience. She offered to help." Mom's voice wavered slightly. "I trusted her. She was my best friend." "What changed after Miss Howell began caring for you?" the lawyer asked. Mom took a deep breath. "At first, everything seemed fine, but gradually I started sleeping more, having trouble moving. Jenny said it was my condition progressing faster than expected. But that wasn't true, was it?" "No." Mom's voice hardened. "She was giving me sleeping pills. When I tried to refuse them, she'd force them into my mouth or mix them with my food. If I managed to hide them..." She touched her cheek unconsciously. "She'd get angry." Alexandra displayed a photograph on the courtroom screens. "Mom, the day I found her, bruises visible on her face, arms, neck. Mrs. Wilson, did you sustain these injuries from falls as the defendant has claimed?" "No." Mom's eyes were steel now. "Jenny hit me when I didn't take the pills, when I tried to use my phone, when I asked to speak to my daughter." Across the courtroom, Jenny shifted in her seat, whispering furiously to her attorney. The jury watched, their expressions hardening. "Mrs. Wilson, why do you believe the defendant was keeping you falsely medicated and isolated?" Mom looked directly at Jenny now. "So she could steal my money and continue her affair with my husband without interference." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Jenny's attorney stood to object, but Judge Reynolds silenced him with a look. "Your Honor," Alexandra said, "I'd like to enter into evidence Exhibit 27, a recording made by Kiara Wilson on the day she discovered her mother's condition." The judge nodded, and the courtroom screens displayed footage from my hidden camera. Jenny's voice filled the space, cold and cruel. "The ungrateful bitch tried to use her phone. I caught her yesterday reaching for it on the nightstand." As the video continued, showing Jenny hitting Mom, discussing their theft with Dad, Mom's hand gripped the armrest of her wheelchair until her knuckles turned white. I wanted to go to her, but I remained in my seat, watching her face as she confronted the betrayal in vivid color. When the defense attorney's turn came, he tried to suggest Mom was confused, that her condition affected her memory. The strategy backfired spectacularly. "Mr. Reeves," Mom said calmly, "I have myopathy, not dementia. My mind is perfectly clear, especially now that I'm not being drugged against my will." By the time Mom was wheeled back to sit beside me, the jury's sympathies were unmistakable. Several were openly glaring at Jenny, who had shrunk in her seat. The next day, Dad took the stand. Unlike Jenny, he had accepted a plea deal, agreeing to testify against her in exchange for a reduced sentence. He looked 20 years older than he had 3 months ago, his banker's polish completely gone. As he recounted the affair, 3 years of sneaking around while Mom was at her book club, the initial idea to have Jenny care for Mom after her diagnosis, I felt nothing but disgust. This hollow man had once been my hero. It was Jenny's idea to increase her medication, Dad admitted, unable to look at either Mom or me. I knew it was wrong, but I was afraid of losing her. And the financial transfers? Alexandra asked. Also Jenny's idea. She said we deserved the money for taking care of Jasmine, that Jasmine would want us to have it. His voice broke. I knew it was wrong, he repeated. When it was the defense's turn, Jenny's attorney tried to paint Dad as the mastermind, Jenny as the manipulated lover, just following his lead. Dad's testimony wavered under cross-examination, but the damage was done. The most dramatic moment came during closing arguments. Alexandra had just finished a powerful summation when Jenny suddenly stood, her face contorted. She's lying, she shrieked, pointing at Mom. She's always been jealous of me. Larry loved me, not her. She was going to die anyway. We deserved that money. The courtroom erupted. Judge Reynolds banged her gavel repeatedly as bailiffs rushed to restrain Jenny, who continued screaming accusations, her composure completely shattered. Her attorney looked stricken, knowing any chance of sympathy from the jury had just evaporated. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. The verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. At the sentencing hearing a week later, Jenny stood hollow-eyed as Judge Reynolds addressed her. Miss Howell, in 20 years on the bench, I have rarely encountered such a complete betrayal of trust. You preyed upon a vulnerable woman who considered you her best friend. You conspired with her husband to steal her resources. Most appallingly, you physically abused her and deliberately impaired her health by administering unauthorized medication. The judge shuffled her papers, her expression stern. Beyond the criminal penalties, this court is notifying the nursing board of your actions. Your license will be permanently revoked. Jenny swayed slightly as if physically struck. Her nursing license, her identity, her livelihood, gone. Jennifer Howell, I sentence you to 12 years in state prison for abuse, aggravated assault, conspiracy to commit fraud, and grand theft. As Jenny was led away, her eyes found mine. There was no remorse there, only hatred. I stared back until she was gone from sight. Dad received his sentence next. 4 years, eligible for parole in 2. The judge acknowledged his cooperation, but made it clear that his betrayal of his marriage vows and his wife's trust warranted significant punishment. Before he was led away, Dad turned toward us. Jasmine, Kiara, I'm so sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, but... Mom cut him off. Save it, Larry. We both know you're only sorry you got caught. Her words hung in the air as the bailiff led him away. This case became media sensation when the news broke out. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and microphones. Mom had agreed to a brief statement, part of her determination to raise awareness about caregiver abuse. Later, as I drove us home, to Mom's home, now free of Dad's and Jenny's presence, Mom grew quiet, watching the familiar streets pass by. What are you thinking? I asked. That I never would have sent that text if I'd known what it would cost you, she said softly. Your job, your apartment in Chicago. I reached over to squeeze her hand. Mom, I didn't lose anything that mattered. I've actually been offered a position at Harriman and Cross here in town. Better hours, comparable pay. But your life in Chicago was just a place I lived, I finished for her. This is home. We pulled into the driveway of the house that had always been Mom's, though Dad had made us both believe otherwise for years. The flower beds that had languished under Jenny's care were blooming again. The porch light welcomed us back. Besides, I added as I helped Mom from the car, there's this little matter of a certain nest egg that a certain someone was saving for me. I hear it's quite substantial. Mom laughed, a real laugh, the kind I hadn't heard since before the diagnosis. Well, I certainly won't need all of it anytime soon. Dr. Reynolds says I might not see serious symptoms for another decade with the right management. We made our way up the front walk together. Mom was using a cane that day, determined to walk the short distance herself. Small victories, the physical therapist called them, each one a triumph over what Jenny had tried to steal from her. "We did it," Mom said as we reached the door. "We really did it." I knew she meant more than just the court case, more than just the walk from the car. She meant surviving, reclaiming, beginning again. "Yes," I agreed, opening the door to the home that was truly ours now. We did.
If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Don't forget to follow for more content just like this. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.